The Anderson family Christmas gathering was in full swing, crystal glasses tinkling as relatives exchanged knowing looks about my struggling career. Mom sat perched on her favorite armchair, orchestrating the gift exchange with her usual precision. "And this one's for Emma," she announced, passing me a small envelope with a pitying smile. "Something practical this year." I accepted it, already knowing what lay inside. Through the window behind her, I could see the helipad lights blinking on my building across the city skyline. "A bus pass," Aunt Margaret exclaimed as I opened it. "How thoughtful, Helen. Especially after Emma's career changes." The changes they referred to were my decision to leave my corporate job 6 months ago. What they didn't know was why. "The 42 route goes right past that little office of yours," Mom added helpfully. "No more parking worries." My phone buzzed discreetly. Tower clearance confirmed for 7 p.m. departure. Crew standing by. Speaking of the office, my cousin Blake smirked from behind his investment banker business card. "How's the consulting going?" I checked my watch. 6:30 p.m. The helicopter would be ready soon. "It's going well," I replied mildly, watching another corporate skyscraper being added to my portfolio through a series of silent phone notifications. "Well enough to afford a car?" Uncle Robert chuckled. "That bus pass will come in handy." Mom touched my arm sympathetically. "Darling, about that offer to help with a down payment on a sensible Honda." My phone lit up again. "Ms. Anderson, acquisition of Pacific Towers complete. Current portfolio value, $2.8 billion. "I'm managing," I said, just as the distinctive whir of helicopter blades became audible through the penthouse windows. "Is that the hospital helicopter?" Aunt Margaret peered outside at the approaching aircraft. "Oh, those poor emergency patients on Christmas." "Actually," I stood up, gathering my things, "that's my ride." The family fell silent as the sleek black helicopter descended onto the adjacent building's helipad, my company logo clearly visible on its side. But the bus pass," Mom stammered. "Will make an excellent bookmark," I finished, retrieving my coat. "Though I haven't taken public transit since acquiring the Transportation Authority last month." "Acquiring they?" Blake's smug expression faltered. "What exactly do you consult on?" The pilot's voice crackled through my phone. "Ms. Anderson, your helicopter is ready." "Real estate mainly," I replied, watching their faces as realization dawned. "That little office you mentioned? It takes up the top 10 floors of the building your firm just tried to lease, Blake. By the way, about that lease application." Mom's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. "Emma, what are you saying? That your practical gift, while touching, might be slightly out of sync with my current transportation needs. But your little consulting business?" Aunt Margaret sputtered, watching the helicopter settle onto the helipad. "Last Christmas you were just starting." "Last Christmas," I corrected. "I was finalizing the acquisition of my first office tower. The one Uncle Robert called an ambitious pipe dream for someone so junior." My phone displayed another update. "Downtown portfolio value, $3.2 billion after Pacific Towers integration." "Those meetings you said you couldn't afford to drive to," Mom began slowly, "were with international investment groups," I finished. "Turns out helicopter travel is more efficient than a sensible Honda." Blake was frantically searching on his phone, his face growing paler by the second. "Anderson Global Properties. That's you? But they're the biggest real estate investment firm in 3 states? I smiled. "Yes. Though after today's acquisition make that 5 states. The pilot's voice crackled again. "Ms. Anderson, weather window optimal for next 30 minutes. Uncle Robert, who'd lectured me about fiscal responsibility last Christmas, was staring at his whiskey glass like it had betrayed him. "The Mitchell Tower acquisition last month was one of my smaller deals," I nodded. "Only $400 million. Though the bus pass would have covered my trip to the closing." Mom stood up, her carefully maintained composure cracking. "Darling, if we'd known." "Known what?" I asked, checking another notification about my latest property closing. "That the daughter you were so worried about actually owns this building? And most of the skyline you can see from these windows." The family's eyes collectively turned to the wall of windows, taking in the glittering towers of downtown. "My towers now." "Your office," Blake said weakly. "The one I called a modest startup space." Takes up half of Anderson Tower, I confirmed. The building your firm's been trying to get into for months. About that lease application denied, by the way. We have standards. Mom was still clutching the bus pass, her expression lost between pride and embarrassment. The downtown development project in the news is mine, I said, walking to the window. Along with most of the buildings you can see from here. That little consulting business you've been so concerned about? It now controls more real estate than the company Blake works for. My phone lit up with another alert. Year-end portfolio valuation complete. $5.4 billion across 5 states. The helicopter, Aunt Margaret whispered, is one of 12 in my fleet, I replied. For when I need to visit my properties in other cities. Slightly more convenient than the 42 bus route. The pilot's voice came through again. Ms. Anderson, Dubai investors awaiting your video call in 45 minutes. I gathered my coat, watching their faces as the full scope of my success finally registered. The daughter they'd tried to help with bus passes and Honda down payments was now one of the largest property owners on the West Coast. Merry Christmas, I said, heading for the door. Oh, and Mom? About that sensible Honda. She looked up, still dazed. I bought the dealership last week. Along with the rest of the automotive group. But thanks for thinking of my commute. The sound of helicopter blades filled the room as I left them sitting there, surrounded by the evidence of their misplaced concern, in a building I owned. The next morning my executive suite at Anderson Tower was buzzing with activity. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see my helicopter fleet gleaming on the private helipad, a far cry from the bus route Mom had so carefully researched. The family's been quite active on Google this morning, my assistant reported, hiding a smile. Lots of searches for Anderson Global Properties and Emma Anderson net worth. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since I'd left the Christmas gathering. Texts from relatives who suddenly remembered my incredible potential. Blake, about that lease application. Perhaps we could discuss over lunch? Aunt Margaret, darling, did I mention my son is getting into real estate? Uncle Robert, that whiskey we discussed, I have a rare collection to show you. The Dubai investors were impressed, my CFO announced, entering with more acquisition papers. They're ready to move forward with the $800 million development project. My phone lit up with a news alert. Anderson Global Properties expands again. Emma Anderson's real estate empire continues explosive growth. Ms. Anderson, my assistant interrupted, your mother is in the lobby. She's brought the bus pass. I smiled, remembering her face when the helicopter landed. Send her up. And pull up the downtown property map on the screens. Mom entered my office like she was stepping into another world. Her eyes darted from the sophisticated control center displaying my real estate holdings to the helicopter landing pad where 3 aircraft bore my company logo. Emma, she started, clutching her designer purse. About last night. The bus pass. I asked mildly, signing off on another billion-dollar acquisition. I brought it back. She held out the envelope, hands shaking slightly. Given your transportation situation. The screens behind me lit up with real-time updates. Anderson Global Properties market cap exceeds $10 billion. The Honda dealership called, my assistant announced. They need approval for the new showroom design. Mom's face flushed as she realized I hadn't been joking about owning the automotive group. The thing is, Emma, she continued, sinking into one of my custom leather chairs, we were just worried about you. When you left your corporate job. To start my own company, I finished. The one that now owns most of downtown, including this building and the country club where you held my career intervention last spring. Her eyes widened. The country club was an impulse purchase, I admitted. Though not as impulsive as buying the helicopter fleet that replaced my need for your bus pass. My phone buzzed with another update. Middle East expansion confirmed. Anderson Global Properties enters international market. Your father, Mom ventured, wants to know if you'll still come to Sunday dinners. I might, I replied, checking my pilot's schedule. Though private aviation tends to run on its own timetable. The office screens switched to a live feed of the city's latest development project, my latest development project. Mom watched, transfixed, as billions in real estate holdings scrolled past. The Mitchell Tower, she whispered, recognizing the building where she'd once suggested I apply for an entry-level position. Just closed last week, I confirmed, along with the entire block. We're demolishing it for something more ambitious. My phone lit up with another text from Blake. That lease rejection, surely we can work something out? Family discount. Your cousin seems concerned about his office space, I noted, showing Mom the message. Blake's firm. She began. Is being evicted next month, I finished. That building needs renovating and their lease application didn't meet our standards. Like Blake said last Christmas, business is business. My assistant appeared with more updates. The helicopter fleet expansion is confirmed. 3 more aircraft arriving next week. Mom stared at the existing fleet through the windows. When you said you were busy with meetings. I was flying between properties, I nodded. That sensible Honda wouldn't have quite managed the commute to our Seattle acquisitions. The screens displayed another breaking news alert. Anderson Global Properties announces $5 billion downtown redevelopment project. The family Christmas party next year, Mom said quietly. We usually host it. In my building, I completed her thought. The one you're sitting in now. Interesting how that worked out. My phone buzzed with a message from Uncle Robert. About that whiskey discussion, I have some excellent investment opportunities to share. The family seems suddenly interested in business meetings, I observed, declining his calendar invite. Mom clutched her purse tighter. We didn't understand what you were building. No, I agreed, watching another of my helicopters take off for a property inspection. You were too busy planning my bus route. My assistant entered again. Your 10 a.m. is here. The mayor wants to discuss the downtown regeneration project. Mom stood, finally grasping the scope of her daughter's little consulting business. The bus pass lay forgotten on my desk, a relic of their misplaced concern. One more thing, I added as she turned to leave. About Sunday dinners. She looked back hopefully. The restaurant you host them at? I bought it last week, along with the rest of the restaurant group. Menu changes pending. As the mayor was shown in, Mom exited past the helicopter pad, past the fleet that had replaced her practical gift, past the empire they'd never seen coming. 1 month after the Christmas bus pass incident, I sat in my private boardroom reviewing the latest acquisition reports. The city skyline, increasingly dominated by Anderson Global Properties, glittered through the panoramic windows. Your family's country club membership renewal is up for review, my assistant mentioned. Given the recent ownership change. I smiled, remembering Mom's face when she'd learned I'd acquired her social sanctuary. Let them sweat it out for another week. My phone lit up with another desperate text from Blake. The eviction notice is final next week. Please, we can discuss terms. The screens around me displayed real-time updates of my portfolio. Anderson Global Properties surpasses $15 billion in assets. The Sunday dinner restaurant called, my assistant continued. Your mother's trying to maintain her usual permanent reservation. Tell them all reservations are under review, I replied, signing off on another skyscraper acquisition, including the family table she's held for 20 years. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Emma Anderson named Real Estate Developer of the Year. From startup to Empire in 18 months. The helicopter pad outside my window was busy today, 3 of my aircraft preparing for property inspections across the coast. A far cry from the bus route Mom had so carefully plotted. Ms. Anderson, my CFO, entered with more papers. The Dubai development is exceeding projections. They're requesting an additional $2 billion investment. I was reviewing the proposal when Mom appeared at my door, looking less certain than her usual country club confidence. Emma, darling, she started, about the club membership. The one you used to lecture me about not being able to afford? I asked, watching another of my helicopters take off. And the restaurant, she continued. 20 years we've had that table. Things change, I noted, signing the Dubai expansion papers. Like transportation preferences. My phone displayed another message, Aunt Margaret this time. Sweetie, remember when I mentioned my son's real estate interests? He'd love to intern. The family seems to be developing a sudden passion for property development, I observed, declining yet another lunch invitation from Blake. We just. Mom sank into a visitor chair, watching the empire she'd never noticed her daughter building. We wanted to help. With a bus pass, I finished. While I was buying the buildings you could see from the bus windows. The screens switched to live footage of the Mitchell Tower demolition, the building where they'd once hoped I'd accept a junior position. Now it was making way for my latest development project. Your father, Mom ventured, would like to discuss some investment opportunities. Like the ones he dismissed as unrealistic last Christmas? I checked another helicopter departure time. I'm afraid my schedule is rather full. Aviation commitments, you understand. My assistant appeared with more updates. The new Anderson Tower West is ready for tenant applications. Your cousin Blake's firm has submitted another proposal. Declined, I said firmly. Though I hear the bus route to their new location is quite efficient. Mom winced at the reference to their well-intentioned gift. Through the windows behind her, crews were removing the old building signage, replacing it with the Anderson Global Properties logo. The thing is, Emma, she said quietly, we never saw the helicopters? I suggested. The buildings? The empire? No, you were too busy planning my commute. My phone lit up with another headline. Anderson Global Properties announces $10 billion international expansion. About Christmas next year, Mom started. Will be held in my new downtown development, I confirmed. The one replacing the building where Blake used to work. Helicopter access only. As if on cue, another of my aircraft lifted off, carrying executives to survey my latest acquisition. Mom watched it go, the bus pass story now a family legend of misjudgment.